Okay, got a 2007 Ford Mustang with a 7.5-inch rear end. Be about the same thing as an 8.8. Same operation, but it has a noise in the rear end, a growling noise, not a whine. If it had a siren type noise, it'd be a ring gear. It's got a growling noise, and the growling noise is right off the bat. That would be pinion bearings. If it's got a growling noise and it takes a while with the speed, you hear it, then that'd be side carrier bearings. But still needs to be taken apart and inspected. So what we're gonna do is take it apart. So first thing you wanna do is put it in the spot where you want it. You wanna block the wheels. Do not put the parking brake on. Put it in neutral. And then jack it up and support it. That you can get up high enough so you can get underneath it or wherever you gotta do. And you need to remove the tires, both rear tires. And then you need to remove your calipers. Your calipers are held on with two 13mm bolts. Okay? They go right here. I already took it apart. One there and one there. The caliper turned around the other direction. And then once you get the caliper off, then you need to remove the caliper bracket, which is this, and it's held on by two 15mm bolts. They look like that. 15mm head, I mean. So you remove the caliper brackets and remove your pads, okay? So now that you got the caliper and the brackets off, now you can raise it up and remove your rear cover, rear differential cover, and it's held on by a bunch of 13mm head bolts. Remove them and watch out for your gear lube because you're going to be draining your gear lube, so make sure you get a pan to catch it. Okay, I got the rear end cover off. You're draining the fluid, and if you have a convertible, I don't know if this matters, a convertible or what, but this one has a torque arm from right to left with an 18mm head bolt that runs from one side to the other side. You got to remove both of them to get that bar out. See, there's the bar. So you have to take this one out first so you can get this one out, because that one kind of goes into a pocket. Okay, so it needs to be removed also. Then you need to remove your drive shaft. Drive shaft's held in with 12mm 12-point bolts. So what you need to do is use a breaker bar with your 12-point socket and a pry bar. Get in there and break them all loose. And then you can use whatever you got, a ratchet or impact, to take them out. Because sometimes if you use an impact on them, you'll snap your socket. Okay? I'm sorry this is already apart, but I had to inspect it. All right? Okay. So now what you need to do is get yourself a center punch, and I always punch the right cap. See the arrow? It's pointing that way. See the left cap? It's pointing that way. That means out, out. So I want to keep the right cap and the left cap separated, so I'm going to put a center punch mark there and a center punch mark there. So that one goes on that side, okay? And then you want to do is turn your shaft till you find your, this is what they call this, a pinion shaft for the carrier. You want to remove the bolt. It's a 5/16 or an 8mm. And you remove this, get a wrench in there, hit it with your hammer, break it loose, and you gotta squeeze it out, okay? Get that out. What we're doing is removing this pin so we can push the axles in to get the C-clips out of the axles into the side gears, okay? So put that aside. You're gonna put it back in when you get it up totally back apart. Okay, so you got that. It's gonna come out. Sometimes it falls right out. Take that out, put it aside. You're gonna put it back in. So then what you need to do is push your axle in, and sometimes the C-clips just fall right out. That one didn't. So now you need to get your finger up in here, up inside here. You feel around for that C-clip, and you move it around. You should feel the opening of it. This is not working good for me at the moment. All right, let me try the other one. See if I can get that one so I can show you. Hold on, I gotta push them in farther. I turned the whole housing. So when you turn this, you see how those stay put? You gotta make sure you keep hold of the side gears so they don't turn on you. Because you don't want them coming apart, because there's a little shim washer underneath the spider gear. And right here's my button for the axle shaft, and right here's my C-clips. So you need to push this C-clip out of the axle. Okay? Right there. And this is what the C-clips look like, okay? And that's what the buttons look like on the end of the shafts, okay? Can you see them? So now you can pull the axle straight out. You don't have, you just pull them straight out, because we're going to replace the axle seals also. When you pull the axles out, you want to wipe them off, because they're usually full of gear lube. Wipe them off down there. Just grab them and pull it. There's a rag up. Okay. What you want to do is you want to inspect that axle where the bearing rides. Okay. Bearing rides right here. If you see any nasty looking spots like it's chipping, then the axle's no good and the bearing's no good. Okay. So as long as you don't see anything, then you're all right. So the axle's good. Check out both axles and make sure you don't see nothing wrong with them. Looks good. Okay. And we're gonna replace these seals, so you get a screwdriver and you, not screwdriver, pry bar, and you pop them out. Put a rag over them so they don't throw grease in your face. Okay, next we want to do is put our pinion shaft back in there, because we don't want these gears to fall out on us while we're taking it out. Okay, you put the shaft back in there, and you got the pin, retainer pin back in there. So now, actually the pinion shaft is supposed to be still on there, but I took it out. So, it's still gonna work. But don't thread that in there too far, okay? I'm gonna show you a trick after we get the caps off. Okay, the caps are 19 or 3/4 bolt, so you want to remove them. Keep them right from left, but you got this one marked anyway. All right. One thing I did forget to tell you though, when you remove the flange bolts on your drive shaft, it was to remove your drive shaft. I don't know if I told you that or not. I might have screwed up there. When you remove your caps, make sure to always keep your hand on it, because sometimes they might be loose and they might fall out. This one's is in there a little bit. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take this pin back out, and we're gonna take this shaft out a little bit, okay? And what we're gonna do is put that right up there against that, like that, okay? And then we're gonna take a screwdriver and pry up on that bolt right there against the case here, the housing, and pry it out. I'll show you in a second. There's the pin. Here's my pry bar. Okay, so I just push on the pry bar and it pulls that rear differential case right out of there. And make sure you keep a hand on it. And when it gets almost all the way out, make sure you grab hold of those bearing caps. And underneath behind those bearing caps, not behind them, but next to them, is your shims, right and left. And those shims are right here. So try not to drop them and get them mixed up. It's okay if you drop one, but grab on the other one and make sure you stick whatever one you grabbed out. If you grab the left one, stick it off to the left. If you grab the right one, stick it off to the right. Do not mix them up, okay? Okay. All right, see the pin? Here's the pin. It's up against it. Got my pry bar. Okay, I'm gonna pry it out. Comes out pretty easy sometimes. All right, I'm prying it. Sometimes it comes out a little crooked, so you just have to pry it out the other way, a little bit evenly. Okay, it's almost out. So, okay. It's ready to rock and roll. So there's the shim here. The other side's got the shim. All I'm gonna do is get my fingers up there. I don't care if that pinion shaft falls out, but ain't no big deal. Just try to grab hold of the whole thing assembly, okay? And then go put it on the bench, all right? Okay. All right. There it is. There's my left shim. There's my right shim. My right cap cone. What you want to do is you want to look at it, see if there's any chunks that missing out of it. And you can also go like this. If it feels good, then that's not your noise, okay? Same thing with the other side. Feel it, okay? Now that you got the drive shaft off, you can grab hold of your pinion flange and you can spin it. And you should hear that one growl. Because this one had noise right off from the start. It had growling noise, all right? So next you want to do is get yourself a 27mm socket, or a socket that will fit your pinion flange nut. Remove your nut, get a hammer, tap on this to remove it off of your pinion, okay? Work it all the way around. Once you got that off, and sometimes this might just fall out, but if it doesn't just fall out, then you tap on the end of it with your hammer, okay? If it's still in there pretty tight, then you have to get yourself a nut. Okay, and then you can use a brass drift inside here, or a punch, and remove the pinion. It needs to be pounded out. So once you got this out, you'll have your bearing on there with its cage. And what you want to do is you want to cut your cage, and then you get the little rollers out of there, and then you want to inspect that bearing. And this is what I found. Okay, so I need to replace this bearing. In order to get this race off, I cut it with a die grinder, and then I'll get a chisel in there, and I'll hit it with a chisel, and it breaks it, and it cracks it open, and then I can use a little chisel and pound them off. They come off real easy. And underneath this is your pinion shim. Okay, this pinion shim should never really change because it goes with the rear end housing. That's what they measure. So clean it up, put it back on your pinion if you're not replacing your pinion. But if you're replacing your pinion, then put it on your new pinion. So now you gotta get your new bearings, and you gotta have to put them on. Also, this is the inner, and this is the outer, and it looks like that inside the housing. What you do is you get your pry bar, pry this seal out, and there's a, it's not a shim, it's like a oil splash shield. And then your bearing comes with it. This race and that race stay in the housing. What you need to do is pound them out with a long piece of a big punch. Pound them out equally. Get those out. This is the front one. Pound that out. This is the rear one. It goes inside the housing. Okay? And we'll get to that in a second. And when you got this all separated, if you don't hear anything, if you don't see anything on this one, then you gotta go to this one. Cut the cage, take the rollers out, and look at that inner race. It should be chewed out. Okay? Another thing to do is inspect your pinion and your ring gear to make sure it's got a good wear pattern and is not chewed up or have any chipped off teeth. Okay, my ring and pinion look good, so I'm gonna put new bearings in it, and we're gonna go from there. Okay, what you need to do is clean up the surface, spray it all out, wipe out where your bearing races go, and make sure you remove whatever might be inside there. You know, make sure you stick your finger up in there and wipe it. See if you got any metal particles or anything. Just make sure you clean it up. Wipe your races, where the races go. The inner one and the outer one. And on the, if you go way up inside here, there's a like a little channel. See it? I'm gonna clean that all out. Make sure there's no debris in there, no metal filings. And also in your axle tubes, you can get your pry bar out and pry those off. Make sure you put a rag over it so it doesn't fling grease all over your face. And then you can spray some cleaner in there and stuff a rag in there and push it through with a long bar. And that'll push everything inside to here, and then you can finish wiping it out. So you want to clean all that up. You want to clean up your cover. And then we'll go ahead and proceed with our bearings, okay? All right, I got my axle tubes all nice and cleaned out. Let's see if I can get my video in there. I might have to turn my camera. Let's see, hey? All right. And here's the rag of what came out of there. Got some little metal bits on there, metal bits. So it does help to clean out those tubes. So if you're just not gonna clean them because you're lazy, then this is what you're gonna leave in there. You don't wanna do that. All right, so now you wanna clean out the pumpkin area too and get that all nice and clean and dried up. And now we can go ahead and do our pinion bearings. Okay, here's my install kit. Got it from Amazon. Took 2 days to get. Not too bad, 165 bucks. What you want to do is you want to match your inner pinion bearing up with your old one and the race with your old one. Make sure that the numbers match. Okay? Same thing with the outers. The numbers match, so it's good. So now what we need to do is put the big pinion bearing onto the pinion shaft and make sure your shim is below it. Make sure it's on there, okay? And then what you need to do is get yourself a pipe that will fit over that to pound it on. And I welded a top to mine because I did a lot of rear ends. So the shim's on there, put the bearing on there like that, put some gear lube in there. Problem is I used this in the dirt, so I'm gonna get some dirt out of it. Anyway, I'll put some gear lube on here, work it in, okay? Hold on.